I'm Cassandra Mitchell, 32 years old, and last Thanksgiving changed my life forever. As our family gathered in my grandfather William's mansion for our annual dinner, nobody expected what happened next. When Grandpa Bill walked into the dining room sporting a dark purple bruise under his eye, the room fell silent. Crystal glasses froze midair. Then he dropped the bombshell, "I'm changing my will today." His piercing blue eyes found mine across the table. "Cassandra, you're the only one I can trust." The daggers my relatives glared at me could have drawn blood. Before I dive into what happened next, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button if you've ever dealt with family drama during holidays, and subscribe to hear more stories about family betrayal, survival, and justice. Trust me, you'll want to know how this all unfolds. To understand what happened that Thanksgiving, you need to know about the Mitchell family. After my parents died in a car accident when I was 12, my grandfather became my rock. William Mitchell wasn't just any grandfather. He built Mitchell Enterprises from nothing into a multi-billion-dollar technology conglomerate. Our family lived in the shadow of his success, and not everyone handled it well. My Uncle Robert, my dad's older brother, always resented that his younger brother had been Grandpa's favorite. As COO of Mitchell Enterprises, Robert spent decades positioning himself to take over, convinced the company was his birthright. He married young, had one son, my cousin Blake, and groomed him to be his successor. Family legacy matters. Cassandra Uncle Robert would remind me at every family gathering, his hand gripping my shoulder just a little too tight. Some of us have Mitchell blood and business sense. The implication was clear. I might have the blood, but as a marketing executive who had built my career outside the family business, I supposedly lacked the latter. Then there was my Aunt Patricia, my mother's sister. After Mom died, she swooped in, supposedly to help raise me, but really to ingratiate herself with Grandpa. Patricia was sweet as sugar to his face, bringing homemade meals and managing his social calendar, but I caught glimpses of her true nature when she thought no one was looking, rolling her eyes when Grandpa talked about his late wife, my grandmother, or misplacing important letters or medication. "Your grandfather needs family around him," she'd say, while rearranging his medicine cabinet. "He's getting forgetful, poor thing." Yet Grandpa's mind was sharp as ever at 78. It was only when Patricia was helping that things went missing. My cousins were no better. Blake Uncle Robert's son was 30 and had never held a real job outside the company. He moved between executive positions, created specifically for him, leaving trails of mistakes for others to clean up. His gambling habit was an open secret, and he frequented high-stakes poker games in private clubs downtown. More than once, Grandpa had quietly covered his debts. "It's just a game," Cass Blake would say, reeking of expensive scotch. Besides, Grandpa loves helping family. "You should try asking for money sometime instead of working like a commoner." Heather, Aunt Patricia's 28-year-old daughter, built her identity as a social media influencer, showcasing the Mitchell lifestyle. Her Instagram featured designer clothes, luxury vacations, and spirituality quotes, all funded by Grandpa's generosity. She'd never worked a day in her life, but considered maintaining her million followers a full-time job. "Image is everything, Cassie," she told me once while filming herself casually drinking coffee in Grandpa's garden. "I'm building the Mitchell brand." What are you doing besides those boring marketing campaigns? The only person besides me who seemed to genuinely care about Grandpa was Raymond Wilson, his CFO and friend of 40 years. Raymond watched the family dynamics with quiet concern, occasionally pulling me aside at events. "Your grandfather values loyalty above all," he told me at last year's Christmas party, his voice low. "He sees it in you, Cassandra." The others. "Well, just keep your eyes open." Looking back, I should have paid more attention to the way my relatives circled Grandpa like vultures. The sidelong glances whenever he mentioned his estate planning. The sudden increase in family visits when rumors spread about him updating his will. The hushed conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. But even with all those warning signs, I never imagined how far they would go to secure their inheritance or how quickly they'd turn on me when they felt threatened. The first clear sign came 3 months before that fateful Thanksgiving when I overheard Uncle Robert on the phone in Grandpa's library. "We need to move soon," he whispered tensely. "The old man's getting suspicious. If he changes things before we're ready, we're all screwed." When he saw me standing in the doorway, he quickly ended the call and smiled too widely. "Just business talk, Cassandra. Nothing for you to worry about." But the look in his eyes told me a different story. Something was coming, and whatever it was, I wouldn't like it. After that tense Thanksgiving dinner, Grandpa asked me to meet him in his study. The room reflected his character mahogany shelves, lined with books he'd actually read, family photos spanning generations, and the worn leather chair where he'd bounced me on his knee as a child. But that evening the space felt different. Heavier. "Lock the door, Cassandra," he instructed, once we were inside, his voice uncharacteristically quiet. When I did, he walked to his desk and pressed a hidden button underneath. A soft click sounded, and he nodded with satisfaction. "Signal jammer," he explained, noting my confusion. "Raymond installed it last week. Prevents any listening devices from transmitting." "Listening devices," I echoed, shocked. "Grandpa, why would you need—" He raised a hand silencing me, then carefully swept his gaze around the room before leaning forward. "Someone in this family is trying to destroy what I've built," he said flatly. "Over the past 6 months, I've discovered significant discrepancies in the company finances. Money disappearing, unauthorized transactions, suspicious contracts with competitors." His bruised eye looked even more pronounced in the study's warm lighting. "And when I started investigating, this happened." My heart raced. "Who did that to you?" "That's not important right now," he said, though his jaw tightened. "What matters is that I need someone I can trust to help me fix this mess, and that person is you, Cassandra." He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a thick manila folder. "Tomorrow, I'm announcing changes to my will and to the company leadership structure. You will be named my primary heir and the new CEO of Mitchell Enterprises, effective immediately." I nearly fell out of my chair. "Me, but Uncle Robert." "Your uncle is part of the problem," Grandpa cut in sharply. "I don't have proof yet, but I suspect he's been working with someone else in the family. Possibly Blake. This folder contains everything I've discovered so far," he continued, sliding it toward me. "Account numbers, transaction records, meeting dates. Study it carefully, but tell no one. Not even Raymond knows everything that's in here." As I reached for the folder with trembling hands, something caught my eye, a small black object tucked behind a book on the shelf nearest Grandpa's desk. It was barely visible, but years of marketing product launches had trained me to spot details out of place. "Grandpa," I whispered subtly, tilting my head toward the shelf. "Don't look now, but I think there's something behind the Hemingway." His expression remained neutral, but he casually stood and walked to the bookshelf, pretending to search for a volume. When he returned to his seat, he slipped something into my hand beneath the desk, a tiny electronic device no bigger than a button. "We'll talk more tomorrow," he said, at normal volume. "Think about what we discussed regarding the family vacation property. Your input is valuable." I played along, nodding and making small talk, until he winked at me, our childhood signal that I should follow his lead. We exited the study together, the folder discreetly tucked into my purse and the listening device wrapped in my handkerchief. In the hallway, we nearly collided with Raymond, who seemed startled to see us. "William, Cassandra," he nodded, his expression unreadable. "Everything all right?" "Just fine, old friend," Grandpa replied smoothly. Cassandra and I were discussing the Aspen property. Raymond's eyes flickered between us. "I see. William, if you have a moment later, there are some documents requiring your attention. Of course. After Raymond departed, Grandpa squeezed my arm. Be careful who you trust, Cassandra. Even old friends can change. I nodded, but as I turned to leave, a conversation from the adjacent room caught my attention. Uncle Robert's voice, low but clear. It's happening sooner than we thought. The old man's making his move tomorrow. Blake's response came slurred, likely drunk. So what, we've planned for this? Not if he names her before we're ready, you idiot. She'll have access to everything. Then we move tonight. The documents are ready, right? I froze, heart pounding, until Grandpa gently pushed me toward the staircase. Go, he whispered. Act normal. I'll handle this. I reluctantly retreated to the guest room, my mind racing. Less than an hour later, a sharp knock startled me. I opened the door to find Uncle Robert, his pleasant mask firmly in place, but eyes cold. Cassandra, dear. Just checking that you're comfortable. I'm fine, thank you. He stepped closer, blocking the doorway. I noticed you and your grandfather had quite the chat earlier. Anything interesting? Just talking about the Aspen property, I echoed Grandpa's earlier explanation. Robert studied my face. You know, family businesses are complicated things. It takes years of experience to understand all the moving parts. His tone hardened. It would be a shame if someone unprepared suddenly found themselves in over their head. People could get hurt. The threat hung in the air between us. Is that what happened to Grandpa's eye? I asked boldly. His expression didn't change, but something dangerous flashed in his gaze. Accidents happen when elderly people try to do too much without help, he replied smoothly. William should be more careful. And so should you, Cassandra. After he left, I double-locked my door and pushed a chair against it for good measure. Sleep was impossible. Instead, I carefully examined the listening device, discovering it was an expensive model typically used for corporate espionage. I also began reviewing the documents Grandpa had given me. Around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps in the hallway and voices outside Grandpa's room. Pressing my ear against the adjoining wall, I caught fragments of conversation and Patricia's distinctive voice. Just take these instead. Help you sleep better. Already took my medication. Grandpa sounded groggy. Different prescription. Doctor changed it yesterday. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. I remembered how often Grandpa had been under the weather during Patricia's visits over the past year. The pieces were starting to fit together, and the picture they formed was terrifying. Someone was tampering with Grandpa's medication. Someone had attacked him physically. And tomorrow, when he announced his intentions for the company, they were planning something worse. I had less than 24 hours to figure out who I could trust and how to protect my grandfather from his own family. At dawn, I slipped out of the mansion to clear my head and form a plan. The Mitchell estate sprawled over 30 acres of manicured gardens and woodland, offering plenty of secluded spots to think. As the sun rose over the property that 5 generations of Mitchells had called home, I felt the weight of what Grandpa had entrusted to me. Using my company laptop and the estate's guest Wi-Fi, I began reviewing the financial documents more thoroughly. The patterns were subtle but clear once you knew to look for them, small amounts siphoned regularly from various corporate accounts, all eventually flowing through shell companies to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Most damning was a series of transfers totaling nearly $2 million over 6 months, all coinciding with high-profile poker tournaments in Las Vegas, Monaco, and Macau. Blake's gambling habit was clearly more serious than anyone had acknowledged. By mid-morning, I'd identified at least $3 million missing, but something didn't add up. This wasn't enough money to justify the risk for a family as wealthy as ours. Blake's gambling could explain his involvement, but Uncle Robert had always been calculating, never reckless. There had to be something bigger at play. I was so absorbed in the numbers that I almost missed Blake's approach. He sauntered across the garden looking surprisingly fresh, despite the previous night's drinking. "Working on a holiday, Cass," he called out, dropping into the chair opposite me. "So dedicated." I closed my laptop casually, "Just catching up on some emails." Blake smirked. "Right. Nothing to do with your little meeting with Grandpa last night." My stomach tightened, but I kept my expression neutral. "What do you want, Blake?" He leaned forward, suddenly serious. "I want to propose a partnership. An alliance, if you will." "What kind of partnership?" "The kind where we both get what we want." His voice lowered. "I know Grandpa's planning to name you in the will, probably giving you my father's spot too." When I didn't respond, he continued, "Look, I don't blame you for playing the game. I respect it, actually. The devoted granddaughter act has been brilliant." "It's not an act," I said coldly. Blake waved dismissively. "Whatever. The point is, I don't actually care about running the company. Never did. That was always Dad's obsession." He glanced around, then leaned closer. "What if we make a deal? You get named CEO, I publicly support you against Dad, and in return, you make sure my trust fund gets substantially upgraded and turn a blind eye to certain financial arrangements I have in place." The audacity was almost impressive. "You mean the money you've been stealing?" If he was shocked that I knew, he recovered quickly. "I prefer to think of it as taking an advance on my inheritance to pay gambling debts." Blake's charming facade slipped momentarily. "That's my business. The point is, we can help each other. Dad's not going to take this lying down. You'll need allies. And if I refuse—" His smile returned colder now. "Then things get complicated. See if someone were to discover evidence that you've been embezzling funds complete with paperwork transactions and witness testimony, Grandpa might reconsider his decision." "That's absurd. I haven't taken anything." "It doesn't matter what you've actually done, Cass. It matters what can be proven." He stood up, straightening his designer jacket. "Family's complicated, isn't it? Think about my offer. You have until Grandpa makes his announcement." After Blake left, I sat frozen, my mind racing. His threat confirmed that something big was planned for today, but it also revealed splits within the conspiracy. Blake was willing to betray his father for the right price. I needed more information, and there was only one person who might have it. Sarah Thompson had been the Mitchell family lawyer for 20 years. Her office returned my call within minutes. "Cassandra, this is unexpected," Sarah said when we connected. "Especially on Thanksgiving weekend. It's about Grandpa. I'm worried about him." A pause. "Go on." I chose my words carefully, uncertain how much to reveal. "He's planning to make changes to his will and the company leadership. I'm concerned that certain family members might resist these changes." Sarah's voice turned cautious. "Your grandfather has discussed his intentions with me. I can't share details, of course, but I will say this isn't the first time there's been resistance to his decisions." "What do you mean?" 10 years ago, your uncle attempted a boardroom coup while William was recovering from heart surgery. It failed, but only just. Last year, there was another attempt involving outside investors. Your grandfather blocked it by purchasing back shares at premium prices. This was news to me. Why wouldn't he tell me about this? William protects those he loves, Cassandra. He especially wanted to shield you after everything you'd been through with your parents. She paused again. "I've said more than I should already. But if you're concerned about your grandfather's safety, you should know that my office has been documenting unusual activities within the company for months. If anything happens to William, that documentation doesn't stay sealed." The warning was clear. Others were watching too. As I drove back to the estate, my phone rang. Michael, my childhood friend, who now worked as a cybersecurity consultant. We'd fallen out of regular contact as our careers progressed, but still checked in occasionally. "Happy Thanksgiving, Cass," he greeted me. "Sorry for the random call, but I got a weird email from Blake last night asking for help with some digital cleanup at Mitchell Enterprises. Wanted to check if it was legitimate before responding." My grip tightened on the steering wheel. Definitely not legitimate. "Michael, how soon can you get to Boston? Is something wrong?" "Very wrong. I need someone I can trust and someone with your particular skills." He didn't hesitate. "I can be there by dinner." As I turned into the estate's long driveway, something felt off about how my car was handling. I slowed down, and that's when I noticed the brake response wasn't right. I pumped them gently, and they barely engaged. My car was picking up speed on the downhill approach to the mansion. I yanked the emergency brake and swerved onto the manicured lawn, coming to a jarring stop mere feet from a marble statue. Heart pounding, I got out and checked underneath the vehicle. The brake line had been cleanly cut. This wasn't just about money anymore. Someone had just tried to kill me. By late afternoon, the mansion was buzzing with tension. Relatives who rarely spoke were huddled in corners, conversations halting whenever I approached. Uncle Robert had called an emergency family meeting before dinner, allegedly to discuss holiday plans. I knew better. After my near accident, I'd texted Michael with a more detailed explanation and asked him to arrive discreetly. I also spent an hour checking Grandpa's personal vehicle, finding and documenting evidence of recent tampering with the steering column. Someone was covering all bases. When I entered the main sitting room for the meeting, all eyes turned to me. Uncle Robert stood near the fireplace, commanding the room like a general before battle. Aunt Patricia sat primly on the sofa while Blake lounged in an armchair looking bored. Heather was predictably filming something for her Instagram. Grandpa wasn't there. "Where's Grandpa?" I asked immediately. Resting Aunt Patricia answered smoothly. "He wasn't feeling well after lunch. I gave him something to help him sleep." Alarm bells rang in my head. "You what? What did you give him?" "Just his regular medication," she replied, affronted. "Really, Cassandra, your concern borders on obsession. William is perfectly fine under my care, as he has been for years." Uncle Robert cleared his throat. "We've called this meeting to discuss a serious matter that can't wait until after the holiday." His gaze fixed on me. "Financial irregularities have been discovered in the company accounts." Blake straightened up, suddenly attentive. Heather put her phone down. "Our preliminary investigation has traced these irregularities to unauthorized access using executive credentials." Robert paused dramatically. "Specifically, credentials traced to Cassandra's devices." The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "That's impossible," I said firmly. Robert held up a folder. "The evidence suggests otherwise. Transfers dating back 18 months, shortly after you were given expanded access to the company systems for your marketing role. He began distributing documents to everyone: bank statements, transaction records, and screenshots, all seemingly implicating me." I quickly scanned the papers, noting discrepancies in dates and amounts compared to what Grandpa had shown me. "This is fabricated," I stated, looking each family member in the eye. "Someone is framing me to cover their own theft." "A predictable defense," Robert replied. "But the evidence is compelling enough that we've had no choice but to alert the board. There will be a formal investigation." "Does Grandpa know about these accusations?" I demanded. Aunt Patricia intervened. "William is in no condition to deal with such distressing news right now. The poor man has been under tremendous strain lately, much of it from your constant whispering in his ear. We've all noticed how you've isolated him from the rest of the family." Heather added her expression, a practiced mixture of concern and disappointment, no doubt perfected for her followers. "Always private meetings, secret conversations. It's not healthy for someone his age." I looked from face to face, seeing the coordinated attack for what it was. They'd planned this meticulously. I want to see my grandfather. Now. That won't be possible, Robert said firmly. His doctor has advised against any agitation. Which brings me to our second agenda item. He produced another document. We've consulted with medical professionals about William's recent behavioral changes. The forgetfulness, the paranoia, the claims of conspiracy. Claims that apparently extended to accusing family members of theft and plotting against him. Patricia interjected, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. Just yesterday he accused me who has devoted years to his care of tampering with his medication. Can you imagine? My blood ran cold. They were setting the stage to have Grandpa declared mentally incompetent. This is insane, I said, standing up. You can't possibly expect anyone to believe this. The board already has concerns, Robert continued as if I hadn't spoken. Several members have witnessed concerning episodes. Combined with the financial irregularities traced to his favorite grandchild, he shrugged. It paints a compelling picture of a vulnerable elder being manipulated. You're the ones manipulating him. I shot back. Whatever you've done to him, Cassandra Patricia exclaimed. These wild accusations only reinforce our concerns about your influence. Perhaps the stress of your financial difficulties has affected your judgment. Blake smirked. We're only trying to help Cass. Embezzlement charges can carry serious prison time. Maybe if you cooperate, admit what you've done, we can arrange a more favorable outcome. I realized then that I was witnessing the execution of their contingency plan. Whatever Grandpa had planned to announce, they were neutralizing it by discrediting both of us simultaneously. I'd like you to leave the property until this matter is resolved, Robert stated. For William's well-being. I'm not going anywhere, I replied, moving toward the door. And I'm checking on Grandpa right now. Robert stepped into my path. The locks on his suite have been changed for his safety. His private nurse is with him. Jessica, at least she was someone I tentatively trusted. Jessica has been relieved of her duties, Patricia said. We've engaged a more qualified caregiver from an agency. I pushed past Robert toward the grand staircase, but Blake and a security guard I didn't recognize blocked my way. Don't make this uglier than it needs to be, Blake warned. I retreated, mind racing. Direct confrontation wouldn't work. They held all the power at the moment. I needed evidence, allies, and a new approach. Fine, I said, feigning defeat. I'll get my things. In my room, I quickly packed essentials and the documents Grandpa had given me, then climbed out the second-story window onto the decorative trellis, a route I'd perfected as a teenager sneaking out to meet Michael at high school parties. From there, I made my way to the garage complex where staff lived. Jessica answered her door cautiously, eyes widening when she saw me. They fired me this morning, she whispered, ushering me inside. Said Mr. Mitchell requested a change, but I know that's not true. He was asking for me when they escorted me out. What have they done to him? I asked urgently. His medication has been gradually changing for months, Jessica explained. I've been documenting the substitutions pills that look similar but aren't what his doctors prescribed. When I raised concerns, Mrs. Hayes said the doctor had updated his regimen. Did you check with the doctor? Jessica nodded. Yesterday. He confirmed no changes had been authorized. That's when I started collecting samples. She retrieved a small box from beneath her bed. I was going to take these to be analyzed after the holiday. I could have hugged her. You're a lifesaver, Jessica. Literally. There's more, she continued, lowering her voice further. The new nurse they've brought in, I recognized her from Mrs. Hayes' social circle. She has no medical background that I know of. As Jessica shared everything she'd observed, my phone buzzed. Michael had arrived and was waiting at the property's service entrance. I needed to move quickly before the family realized I hadn't left as ordered. Jessica, would you be willing to document all of this officially? Make a statement to lawyers and possibly the police. She didn't hesitate. Absolutely. Mr. Mitchell has been good to me for years. I won't let them hurt him. With Jessica's evidence secured and plans to meet with Michael, I slipped out into the gathering darkness. My apartment would certainly be watched, so I'd need somewhere else to regroup. As I navigated the perimeter of the estate, a notification popped up on my phone. Heather had just posted a new video. My stomach dropped as I watched myself portrayed as a mentally unstable, money-hungry manipulator who'd been stealing from the family business while isolating my poor, confused grandfather from his loving family. The comments were already flooding in her followers, expressing outrage at my alleged behavior. The character assassination had begun publicly. Whatever happened next, the Mitchell family's dirty laundry was now on full display to the world, exactly as they'd planned to discredit any claims I might make. As I reached the service entrance, another text came through, this time from an unknown number. Apartment broken into. Don't go home. Evidence planted. They're setting you up for criminal charges. R.W. Raymond Wilson had just confirmed my worst fears and made his allegiance clear. At least I had one more ally inside the mansion. Meeting Michael's worried gaze as he opened his car door for me, I realized I had just become a fugitive from my own family, fighting not just for an inheritance, but for my grandfather's life and my own. The next 48 hours were the lowest point of my life since losing my parents. Michael set me up in a motel outside the city, paid in cash while we assessed the situation. My worst fears were confirmed when I checked my email. I'd been placed on administrative leave from my marketing job, pending an investigation into ethical concerns. Uncle Robert's influence extended far beyond the family business. They've frozen your bank accounts too, Michael reported, after making some calls through his network. Credit cards are being monitored. They're treating this like a federal fraud case. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, head in my hands. They've thought of everything. Not everything, Michael countered, unpacking surveillance equipment from his car. They don't know about me or Jessica's evidence or whatever Raymond might be doing to help from the inside. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Heather's social media campaign had gone viral with major outlets, now picking up the story of the Mitchell family drama. The narrative was spinning further out of control. Privileged granddaughter allegedly steals millions, then flees when confronted. We need to get ahead of this, I said, pacing the small room. Every hour Grandpa remains under their control is dangerous. Michael nodded. First, we document everything. Then we gather more evidence. Once we have enough, we go to the authorities. Over the next day, we built our case. Jessica smuggled out more medication samples and patient care logs showing the gradual changes in Grandpa's treatment. Michael analyzed the financial documents, identifying digital signatures that proved the transactions implicating me had been backdated and fabricated. Classic misdirection, he explained. They created a fake paper trail showing you stealing money when really they were covering up their own much larger theft. But our biggest break came from an unexpected source. Raymond texted from a burner phone requesting a meeting at a diner 20 miles from the estate. I can't be seen with you, he warned when we sat down in a corner booth. They're watching everyone. How's my grandfather? I asked immediately. Raymond's expression darkened, heavily sedated. Patricia's nurse is keeping him controlled but functional enough to sign documents when needed. The board meeting is still scheduled for Monday. Robert plans to have William formally announce his retirement due to health concerns, with Robert taking over as interim CEO. Can't the board see something's wrong? Many are old friends of your grandfather, but Robert has been wooing them for years. He's positioned this as a dignified transition to spare William public embarrassment over his deterioration. Plus, several key members have conflicts of interest. Robert has made sure of that. Raymond slid a flash drive across the table. Security footage from the night before Thanksgiving. I've been systematically copying evidence for months, but this is the most damning. Back at the motel, we reviewed the footage. The night vision camera showed Uncle Robert entering Grandpa's study around 11 p.m. An argument ensued, escalating until Robert struck Grandpa across the face when the older man turned to leave, causing him to fall against the desk corner, explaining the bruise. "They physically attacked him," I whispered in horror. "Keep watching," Raymond had advised. Minutes later, the footage showed Blake entering, panicking at the sight of Grandpa on the floor, then helping Robert move him to a chair. Their conversation was clear in the audio. "What the hell, Dad?" Blake hissed. "He was going to cut us out completely," Robert replied. "Move up the announcement to tomorrow." Said he had proof we've been stealing. "So you hit him, that wasn't the plan." "Plans change. Get Dr. Hendricks on the phone. We're moving to contingency B. The competency claim, that'll take weeks to arrange. Not if we have a medical emergency tonight." Patricia's already adjusting his medication. By morning, he'll be confused enough to justify everything else we've planned. The footage confirmed our worst suspicions. This wasn't just financial manipulation, but a coordinated attack on Grandpa's health and autonomy. Michael and I spent hours building a counterplan. We needed more than just evidence of wrongdoing. We needed to catch them in the act. With Raymond's help, we installed hidden cameras in key locations throughout the mansion and Grandpa's private quarters. Jessica, still in contact with sympathetic staff, created opportunities for us to gather information. Our second major break came when Blake, perhaps feeling guilty, or simply hedging his bets, reached out to meet me again. "I didn't know how far they would go," he claimed, as we sat in his luxury car in an abandoned parking lot. His hands trembled slightly as he lit a cigarette. "Dad's obsessed. This isn't just about money anymore. It's about winning, about proving Grandpa wrong for always favoring your father over him." "What about the bruise?" I asked. "The medication tampering." Blake looked away. "That wasn't supposed to happen. Dad lost control. And Aunt Patricia, she's been gradually increasing the dosages for months. Says it's to keep him compliant, but sometimes I wonder if she's trying to." He couldn't finish the sentence. "Trying to kill him," I supplied flatly. Blake flinched but didn't deny it. "Look, I've done some questionable things, but I never signed up for elder abuse or worse. The board meeting on Monday is when they're making their final move. Dad has documents ready for Grandpa to sign new will transfer of voting rights retirement announcement. And if he refuses, he won't be in any condition to refuse." Blake finally met my eyes. "Patricia's nurse has something special planned to ensure he's cooperative." My blood ran cold. "Why are you telling me this?" "Maybe I have limits after all," he said with a bitter laugh. "Or maybe I'm just betting on you to win. Either way, I've given you what you need." As he drove away, I realized Blake had provided valuable intelligence while carefully avoiding directly implicating himself. Typical Blake, always playing all angles. That evening, as Michael and I refined our plan, I barely escaped a second attempt on my life. A delivery person with a package arrived at my motel room, except I hadn't ordered anything, and the motel clerk hadn't directed anyone to my room. Michael's security training kicked in. He approached from the side hallway, noticing the man's suspicious posture and concealed weapon. The confrontation was brief. Michael subdued him while I called police, but the would-be assassin escaped before authorities arrived, leaving behind a package that contained nothing but newspaper and a tracking device. "They found us," Michael said grimly. "We need to move. Now." We relocated to his friend's vacant cabin in the woods, using cash only and burner phones. The stakes had escalated from inheritance theft to attempted murder. With less than 2 days until the board meeting, we finalized our counterstrike. Raymond confirmed he'd secured digital access to the company systems. Jessica had enlisted 2 other staff members who were loyal to Grandpa. Michael's security contacts were on standby. Sarah Thompson had been quietly preparing legal documents. For the first time since Thanksgiving, I felt a glimmer of hope we weren't just fighting back, we were going to win. But first, we needed to get my grandfather safely out of that mansion and away from the people slowly poisoning him. Sunday morning brought unexpected leverage. Raymond called from his burner phone with urgent news. William had a moment of clarity last night and managed to contact me privately. He's aware something's wrong with his medication and suspects Patricia. He asked for you specifically. My heart leapt. Did you tell him what we know? As much as I safely could. He instructed me to activate the Mitchell contingency protocol. I frowned. The what? It's something he set up after your parents died, emergency measures in case of suspected foul play against family members. It grants immediate authority to his designated successor to take temporary control of all assets pending investigation. And who's the designated successor? You are Cassandra. Have been for years. The documentation is in his private vault at Cornerstone Bank downtown. This changed everything. With proper legal documentation of Grandpa's wishes, we could potentially bypass the board entirely. Michael and I split up to cover more ground. While he worked with his security contacts to set up surveillance at the mansion, I met Sarah Thompson at her office to review the contingency protocol documents Raymond had helped retrieve. These are entirely legitimate, Sarah confirmed after examination. Properly executed, witnessed, and notarized 5 years ago. William was always meticulous about protecting his legacy. Will they hold up against whatever Robert has planned? They supersede any documentation signed under duress or while medically impaired, she explained. The protocol includes provisions for immediate medical examination by independent doctors. If William shows signs of drugging or coercion, we can nullify anything he's signed recently, I finished. Sarah nodded. Exactly. But timing is crucial. We need to execute this before Robert forces William to sign the new documents tomorrow. We spent hours preparing legal filings and court orders ready for emergency submission. Sarah's junior partners were assigned to monitor specific judges known for their integrity, ensuring we could get immediate hearings if necessary. Meanwhile, Michael had set a trap of our own. Using Blake's earlier information and Raymond's access, we'd identified exactly which documents Robert planned to have Grandpa sign. Michael created duplicate versions with microscopic differences, changes in punctuation spacing, and other forensic markers that would prove tampering if Robert's team altered the originals after signing. By Sunday afternoon, we'd established a secure communication network between our growing team of allies. Raymond monitoring from inside the company, Jessica documenting medical evidence, Sarah preparing legal countermeasures, Michael coordinating security. 2 loyal board members Raymond had confidentially briefed. An independent medical team on standby. A digital forensics expert analyzing the financial records. A trusted reporter from iView AM. The Wall Street Journal ready to break the real story. Our most crucial breakthrough came from Aunt Patricia herself, though she had no idea she was providing it. Jessica had strategically placed one of Michael's recording devices in the medication cabinet, capturing Patricia's instructions to the fake nurse. Double the usual dose tomorrow morning before the board meeting, Patricia instructed clinically. We need him compliant but still able to sign his name legibly. That's dangerously close to an overdose, the fake nurse replied, sounding concerned despite her role in the plot. Don't be dramatic, Patricia dismissed her. I've been adjusting his medication for months. I know exactly how much his system can handle. The recording continued as Patricia detailed exactly which medications she'd been tampering with and for, how long a full confession of premeditated elder abuse that would be impossible to explain away. With this evidence secured, I made the most difficult call of our operation directly to Uncle Robert. "You've got some nerve," he answered coldly. "I want to make a deal," I stated plainly. His laugh was derisive. "You're a fugitive, with frozen assets and criminal charges pending. What could you possibly offer?" "A clean exit. I have the security footage of you attacking Grandpa. I have recordings of Patricia admitting to drugging him. I have forensic financial evidence showing who really embezzled company funds." Silence stretched for several seconds. "If you're bluffing, I'm not. But I'm willing to discuss terms if you're ready to end this before it destroys everyone." Another pause. "What do you want?" "A meeting. Tonight. Just you and me." "Where?" "The boathouse at the estate. 8 p.m. Come alone." I had no intention of negotiating, but the meeting would serve two purposes: distract Robert from our real operation and potentially extract additional confessions while he believed he was negotiating from a position of strength. The boathouse had been a childhood haven for me, a place where Dad had taught me to fish and later where Grandpa had continued those lessons after my parents died. Robert wouldn't suspect that every inch of it was now wired for recording or that Michael's team would be monitoring from multiple positions. As sunset approached, Michael squeezed my hand. "Be careful. If anything seems off, abort immediately. I'll be fine." I assured him, though my pounding heart suggested otherwise. Besides, the real mission is happening simultaneously. While I kept Robert occupied at the boathouse, Raymond and Jessica would be implementing the most critical phase of our plan, getting Grandpa to a secure location for medical evaluation before tomorrow's board meeting could take place. The evening air was crisp as I approached the boathouse, deliberately arriving early to ensure everything was in place. The recording equipment was well hidden, the exits clear, and Michael's team positioned strategically around the perimeter. At exactly 8, the boathouse door opened. Uncle Robert entered alone, his expression unreadable in the dim lighting. "You've caused quite the commotion, Cassandra," he began, remaining standing. "The board is not impressed by your allegations." "I haven't made any allegations to the board. Yet." His smile was cold. "Precisely my point. You're bluffing. If you had actionable evidence, you'd have gone to the authorities already." I let the statement hang in the air, giving him room to incriminate himself further. Robert had always loved the sound of his own voice, a weakness I was counting on. "I always respected your intelligence," he continued, pacing slowly. "You remind me of your father, stubborn, idealistic, convinced of your own righteousness." His tone hardened. That didn't end well for him either. My blood froze. "What do you mean?" Robert seemed to catch himself, backtracking quickly. "I meant his career trajectory. William always favored him despite his lack of business acumen. But the implication hung in the air between us. I filed it away for future investigation, one shocking revelation at a time. "Let me be clear about your situation," Robert continued, regaining his composure. "You have no leverage. Whatever evidence you think you have won't stand against the resources at my disposal. The board trusts me. Law enforcement is already investigating you. Your reputation is destroyed." I remained silent, letting him build his case. However, he continued, "Family is family. I'm prepared to offer you a way out, a generous settlement relocation assistance, a fresh start far from here. In exchange, you sign over any claim to William's estate or company leadership. And Grandpa, what happens to him?" Robert's expression softened in a practiced way. "William will receive the best care money can buy. His health is clearly failing, we all see it. He needs rest, not the stress of running a multinational corporation. While you run it instead, someone has to. It's what I've been groomed for my entire life, what I've earned through decades of service while you built your career elsewhere. I checked my watch discreetly. The extraction operation should be underway. I needed to keep Robert talking for at least 15 more minutes. And Blake, where does he fit in your vision? Robert's expression darkened momentarily. Blake will be taken care of. He has potential with proper guidance. Like the guidance that led him to embezzle millions for gambling debts. Exaggerated rumors Robert dismissed, though, his jaw tightened. Youthful indiscretions that have been addressed. And Heather's social media campaign against me, was that your idea, or Patricia? A regrettable necessity. Public perception matters in cases like these. He glanced at his watch. You haven't answered my offer. I have conditions. I stalled. Written guarantees about Grandpa's care, independent medical oversight. My phone buzzed our signal. The extraction had succeeded. Robert misinterpreted my smile. Expecting reinforcements, I took the liberty of having the area secured. Actually, I stood up feeling confident for the first time in days. I was just confirming that Grandpa is now safely away from the mansion and under proper medical care. Independent doctors are currently documenting his actual condition and the substances in his system. The color drained from Robert's face. You're lying. The Mitchell contingency protocol has been activated, Uncle Robert. As of 30 minutes ago, I have temporary control of all assets pending investigation. The board meeting tomorrow has been officially postponed by executive order. For a moment, I thought he might physically attack me as he had Grandpa. Instead, he laughed a hollow, desperate sound. You think you've won? This isn't over, Cassandra, not by a long shot. As he stormed out, I released a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Phase 1 was complete. Grandpa was safe, the immediate danger neutralized. But Robert was right about one thing: this wasn't over. Now came the hardest part, proving what they'd done and making them face consequences for it. The real battle was just beginning. With Grandpa safely under independent medical care and the contingency protocol in effect, we finally had breathing room to piece together the full extent of the conspiracy. The medical team's preliminary findings confirmed our worst fears. Grandpa's system contained multiple medications not prescribed by his doctors, including powerful sedatives and drugs known to cause confusion and memory issues. It's been systematic and deliberate, Dr. Henderson, the independent physician, explained. Long-term administration of these substances in these combinations could have eventually proven fatal while appearing as natural deterioration due to age. In other words, they hadn't just been controlling him, they'd been slowly killing him. While the doctors worked to safely clear the drugs from Grandpa's system, Michael and I met with Raymond and Sarah to review all the evidence we'd gathered. In Sarah's secure conference room, we spread everything across a large table: financial records, medical documentation, security footage, audio recordings, and witness statements. We need to understand exactly what happened and why I insisted. Starting with the bruise. Raymond pulled up the security footage on his laptop. This is the complete sequence from Thanksgiving Eve. William had been growing suspicious for weeks. He'd discovered financial discrepancies and asked me to quietly investigate. The footage began at 1:04 p.m., showing Grandpa in his study reviewing documents, the same ones he would give me the next day. At 1:17 p.m., Uncle Robert entered without knocking. Still working, Old Man Robert's tone was condescending. It's late. Grandpa barely looked up. I'm busy, Robert. With what more accusations against your own family? This caught Grandpa's attention. How did you know about that? Robert's smile was cold. The walls have ears, William. Always have. You've been spying on me. It wasn't a question. Protecting company interests. Someone has to, especially when the CEO is making irrational decisions. Grandpa stood, anger visible even in the grainy footage. Irrational, is that what you call discovering that millions have been siphoned from company accounts? That my own son has been negotiating with our competitors behind my back. Those discussions were exploratory. Standard business practice. And Blake's gambling debts, the offshore accounts Patricia tampering with my medication, are those standard practices too? Robert's composure cracked. You're becoming paranoid. It's sad to watch. I'm changing my will tomorrow, Grandpa stated firmly, and announcing leadership changes at the company. Cassandra Roberts' voice rose sharply. That's what this is about. You're handing everything to her. She hasn't even worked for the company in years. She's the only one I can trust. The only one who hasn't tried to steal from me or control me. Robert stepped closer. You've lost your mind. Decades I've given to this company. Decades. While you favored my brother, then his daughter. I've earned this, William. You've earned nothing. Now get out. As Grandpa turned to leave, Robert grabbed his arm. When Grandpa pulled away, Robert struck him a single blow that caught Grandpa off balance, sending him crashing against the desk corner. The impact was worse than I'd initially thought. Grandpa crumpled to the floor, momentarily unconscious. Robert stood frozen, perhaps shocked by his own actions. Minutes later, Blake entered his reaction, confirming he hadn't known about the physical confrontation. Jesus Christ, Dad. What did you do? He fell, Robert said mechanically. Bullshit, is he breathing? They checked. Grandpa's pulse helped him to a chair. He regained consciousness, disoriented but alive. Blake paced frantically. This changes everything, Blake hissed. Assault charges. Nobody's charging anyone, Robert snapped. He fell. That's what happened. And when he tells Cassandra tomorrow, when he calls the police, he won't remember clearly, Robert said, already formulating a plan. Call your aunt. Tell her it's time for the contingency plan. The footage continued, showing Patricia arriving with a medical bag, administering an injection over Grandpa's weak protests. Just something for the pain, William, she soothed as he lost consciousness again. Everything will be clearer in the morning. The three of them then carefully moved Grandpa to his bedroom, arranging him as if he'd simply fallen asleep reading. Watching this play out, I felt physically ill. They assaulted him, drugged him, then gaslighted him about his own experience. It gets worse, Raymond said, grimly switching to footage from the next morning, Thanksgiving Day. Patricia entered Grandpa's room at 6 a.m., administering more medication while he was still groggy. When he mentioned the confrontation with Robert, she skillfully redirected him. You had a fall, William. In your bathroom. Robert found you and called me. You were very confused, talking about conspiracies again. But you hit the sink when you fell. We were all so worried. Throughout the day, footage showed Patricia, Robert, and occasionally Heather reinforcing this false narrative, isolating Grandpa from staff who might question the story. They created an alternate reality, Michael observed. Classic gaslighting technique. But why the bruise? Sarah asked. Why allow something so visible before a family gathering? Raymond had the answer. They didn't expect him to be so resistant to the medication. William has always had unusual drug tolerance. They thought he'd be too sedated to appear at dinner, giving them time to perfect their story. When he insisted on joining the family, they had to improvise. Which is why he made his announcement, I realized. He knew something was wrong, but couldn't trust his own memories. So he made a public statement that would be harder for them to manipulate. The footage from other cameras revealed more pieces of the puzzle. Blake hiring someone to install listening devices throughout the mansion. Heather secretly photographing Grandpa during confused moments to document his deterioration. Patricia systematically replacing medication over months, gradually increasing dosages. Most shocking was footage from the family meeting I'd been excluded from after being asked to leave the estate. Robert, Patricia, and Heather rehearsed their statements about my alleged embezzlement, carefully crafting the narrative they would present to the board. We need to ensure the competency evaluation happens before William can recover, Robert instructed. Once he's declared unfit to manage his affairs, everything else falls into place. What about Cassandra? Heather asked. The legal team says her power of attorney could complicate things. Leave Cassandra to me, Robert replied ominously. The attempted sabotage of my car and the hired attacker at the motel suddenly made horrifying sense. After reviewing all the evidence, our legal strategy crystallized. Sarah presented a comprehensive plan. First, we file for emergency protective orders for both William and Cassandra. Then we submit evidence of financial crimes to the SEC and FBI simultaneously. The elder abuse documentation goes to the district attorney along with attempted murder charges for the car sabotage and hired attacker. What about the company? Raymond asked. The Mitchell contingency protocol gives us temporary stability, Sarah explained. With William's medical situation documented, we can prevent any board action until he's recovered enough to make his wishes clear. By Monday morning, instead of the board meeting Robert had planned, he and the others faced a very different reality. The mansion was served with multiple court orders preventing any destruction of evidence. Their access to company systems was revoked. Assets were temporarily frozen pending investigation. But our most powerful moment came when we finally heard the truth directly from Grandpa himself. After 3 days of proper medical treatment, his mind had cleared significantly. Michael recorded his statement both as evidence and to protect against any further manipulation. I began noticing problems about a year ago. Grandpa explained, his voice stronger than I'd heard in months. Small discrepancies in reports, meetings. I supposedly approved but didn't recall medication that left me foggy. He described how he'd started keeping separate records, working with Raymond to track the inconsistencies. How he'd planned to confront the family after gathering sufficient evidence. The night before Thanksgiving, Robert attacked me when I told him about my plans to name Cassandra as my successor. I remember that clearly, despite their attempts to convince me otherwise. His eyes, clear and determined, met mine through the camera. They tried to make me doubt my own mind, Cassandra. But I never doubted you. Not for a moment. With Grandpa's statement secured and our evidence organized, we were ready for the final confrontation. The board had scheduled an emergency session to address the situation. It would be our opportunity to expose the full truth to those with the power to help us reclaim what had been stolen: Grandpa's health, my reputation, and the company's integrity. The Mitchell family war was reaching its climax, and this time we were fully armed for battle. The Mitchell Enterprises boardroom had always intimidated me as a child. 24 floors up with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston Harbor and a massive mahogany table that seated 20. Portraits of past company leaders lined the walls, including my father and grandfather. It was designed to project power, stability, and unquestionable authority. I'd never expected to enter it as the central figure in a corporate coup drama. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. By 9:30, the room was filling with board members, legal representatives, and key executives. The tension was palpable. Everyone had received some version of events, either through official channels, media reports, or the company grapevine, but no one had the complete story. At 9:45, Uncle Robert arrived with his legal team, looking confident despite everything. He nodded to several board members who greeted him warmly, his allies, I presumed. When he saw me sitting near the head of the table, his steps faltered momentarily before he recovered his composure. "Bold move, showing your face here," he muttered as he passed. Aunt Patricia and Heather arrived next, both dressed immaculately and projecting calm dignity. Patricia's eyes widened slightly at seeing me, while Heather immediately pulled out her phone, no doubt updating her followers on this latest development. Blake slipped in last, looking uncomfortable and avoiding eye contact with everyone, especially his father. At precisely 10 a.m., the doors closed, and Harold Winters, the board's senior member and a longtime friend of my grandfather's, called the meeting to order. "We face an unprecedented situation," he began gravely. "Serious allegations have been made against several members of the Mitchell family, including elder abuse, financial crimes, and corporate espionage. Simultaneously, questions have been raised about William Mitchell's health and competency." Robert immediately raised his hand. "If I may, Harold, this situation, while regrettable, has a straightforward resolution. As COO and William's designated successor—" "You are not his designated successor," I interrupted, sliding copies of the contingency protocol documentation to each board member. "This legally executed document confirms that my grandfather named me as his contingency successor 5 years ago, with full authority to act on his behalf during any period of incapacitation or suspected malfeasance." Robert's face reddened. "This is absurd. William has discussed succession planning with me for years." "Discussions aren't legally binding documents," Sarah Thompson interjected smoothly. "These are." Harold reviewed the papers carefully. "These appear to be in order, properly witnessed and notarized. However, given the contradictory claims, we should hear from all parties before making determinations." Over the next hour, Robert presented his version of events, a story of Grandpa's sad mental decline, my opportunistic manipulation, and his own reluctant intervention to protect the company and his father's dignity. Patricia tearfully described her devoted care and concern. Heather presented social media analytics showing public support for their narrative. When my turn came, I took a deep breath and stood. "Board members, what you've heard is an elaborate fiction designed to conceal crimes against both my grandfather and this company. I have evidence proving that William Mitchell has been systematically drugged, gaslighted, and abused by his own family members in an attempt to seize control of his company and fortune." I nodded to Michael, who distributed comprehensive evidence packets to each board member while displaying key video clips on the boardroom's screens. "This security footage shows Robert Mitchell physically assaulting my grandfather the night before Thanksgiving, causing the bruise many of you noticed." The room fell silent as they watched the undeniable evidence of Robert striking Grandpa. "These medical reports document the unauthorized substances found in my grandfather's system administered by Patricia Hayes over months to cause confusion and mental impairment." Patricia gasped, her hand flying to her throat. "These are fabrications. I would never." "This audio recording suggests otherwise," I interrupted, playing the clip of Patricia instructing the fake nurse to double Grandpa's dosage. As each piece of evidence was presented, financial records showing embezzlement documentation of the attempts on my life, Blake's gambling-linked offshore accounts, the coordinated gaslighting campaign, the board members' expressions shifted from skepticism to shock to outrage. Robert's attorney tried to object multiple times, but the evidence was overwhelming and irrefutable. When we played Grandpa's clear, lucid statement describing the abuse he'd endured, several board members visibly struggled with emotion. "William Mitchell is not mentally incompetent," I concluded. "He was deliberately drugged to appear that way. He is currently under independent medical care, recovering from systematic poisoning orchestrated by his own family members for financial gain." The boardroom erupted in overlapping voices. Robert's face had gone from red to ashen. Patricia was openly weeping, though whether from remorse or fear of consequences was unclear. Heather stared at her phone, perhaps realizing her influencer career would soon take a very different turn. Only Blake seemed unsurprised, slumped in his chair with an air of resignation. Robert finally found his voice. "This is a coordinated attack by a disgruntled family member. These videos could be manipulated. The medical reports could be falsified. William's statement could be coerced. None of this would stand up in court. That's why the FBI and SEC have already been provided with copies of everything presented today, Sarah replied calmly. As have the district attorney and elder services. The legal process is already underway, independent of this board's decisions. The room fell silent again. Harold cleared his throat. In light of this evidence, I move that we immediately suspend Robert Mitchell, Patricia Hayes, and Heather Hayes from any role or authority within Mitchell Enterprises pending full investigation. Further, I move that we recognize the Mitchell Contingency Protocol as valid and acknowledge Cassandra Mitchell's temporary authority until William Mitchell is medically cleared to resume his duties. The vote was not unanimous. Robert's allies tried to delay and obscure, but the majority carried the motion. Robert was officially suspended as COO, escorted from the building by security, his access credentials and company devices confiscated on the spot. Patricia and Heather received similar treatment. As the meeting adjourned, Blake approached me cautiously. "I know it doesn't mean much now, but I'm sorry," he said quietly. "It got out of hand so quickly. I never wanted." "Save it for your deposition," I replied coolly. "Your cooperation so far will be noted, but you're still implicated in serious crimes." His shoulders slumped. "I know. For what it's worth, I really did draw the line at hurting Grandpa physically. That was all Dad." As he walked away, Raymond joined me at the table. "It's not over," he warned. "Robert won't go down without a fight. He'll hire the best criminal defense team money can buy, challenge every piece of evidence, claim corporate conspiracy." "Let him," I replied. "The truth is on our side." We were gathering our materials when a commotion erupted in the hallway. Raised voices, security officers rushing past. Then a single gunshot echoed through the building. Michael and I raced toward the sound, reaching the elevator bank just as security surrounded Uncle Robert, who stood with a smoking gun in his hand. On the floor, clutching his shoulder, was Raymond. "You betrayed me," Robert was shouting as security wrestled the weapon away. "Years of friendship and you sided with her?" Raymond, despite the blood seeping between his fingers, managed a grim smile. "I sided with William. Always have. Everything happened quickly after that, paramedics rushing in, police securing the scene, Robert being led away in handcuffs, now facing attempted murder charges on top of everything else. In the chaos, I felt a sharp pain in my side, the stress of the past week finally manifesting physically. As paramedics attended to Raymond, I stumbled against the wall, suddenly dizzy and struggling to breathe. The last thing I remembered was Michael catching me as my knees buckled, calling my name as darkness closed in. I woke up in the hospital, monitors beeping steadily beside me. The room was dim, but I could make out a figure in the chair next to my bed. Grandpa looking tired but clear-eyed, holding my hand in his. "Welcome back," he said softly. "You gave us quite a scare." I tried to speak, found my throat dry. He helped me sip water through a straw. "What happened?" I finally managed. "Acute stress reaction combined with exhaustion and dehydration. The doctors say you'll be fine after rest." "Raymond." "Surgery went well. The bullet missed anything vital. He'll recover." "And Robert." Grandpa's expression hardened. "In jail, where he belongs. No bail granted given the violent nature of his crime and flight risk. Patricia and Heather are also in custody. Blake has made a deal with prosecutors in exchange for testimony." I closed my eyes, relief washing over me. "It's really over then." "Thanks to you," Grandpa squeezed my hand. "You saved my life, Cassandra. You saved the company. You stood against impossible odds and won." As I drifted back to sleep, I felt safer than I had since that Thanksgiving dinner when everything changed. The fight had nearly cost me everything, my reputation, my career, my life. But in that moment, seeing the clarity in my grandfather's eyes again made it all worthwhile. The Mitchell family war had reached its conclusion. Now the healing could begin. 1 year later, we gathered again for Thanksgiving, a smaller, genuine celebration so different from the tension-filled performance of the previous year. Grandpa had insisted on hosting at the mansion, saying, "We shouldn't let bad memories steal our home from us." The past 12 months had been a journey of recovery, rebuilding, and justice. Grandpa's health had improved dramatically once Patricia's medication tampering stopped. At 79, he was sharper and more energetic than he'd been in years, though he'd chosen to scale back his daily involvement in the company. "Semi-retirement suits me," he'd admitted. "Gives me time for fishing." As we set the dining table together, just the two of us preparing for our small gathering of trusted friends, he pointed to the chair at the head of the table. "That's yours now, Cassandra." I shook my head. "It's still your table, Grandpa." He placed his hands on my shoulders. "The company is yours now. The table should match." After the dust settled from the arrests and initial legal proceedings, Grandpa had made good on his original intention, naming me CEO of Mitchell Enterprises. The transition hadn't been easy. Some board members resisted employees, questioned my experience, and competitors tried to exploit the scandal, but we'd weathered the storm. The legal consequences for my relatives had varied. Uncle Robert received the harshest sentence, 20 years for financial crimes, elder abuse, attempted murder, and conspiracy. His trial had been quick, the evidence overwhelming, despite his expensive legal team's efforts. Aunt Patricia negotiated a plea deal, 12 years for elder abuse medication, tampering, and conspiracy, with the possibility of parole after 8. Her defense had centered on being manipulated by Robert, a claim undermined by the methodical nature of her actions. Heather received 5 years probation and community service for her lesser role, though the court of public opinion had delivered its own punishment. Her influencer career imploded when her followers learned the truth. She'd recently begun therapy and vocational training, her first steps toward an honest life. Blake's cooperation had earned him the lightest sentence, 3 years in a minimum security facility for financial crimes, with most of his personal assets seized to repay his gambling debts. He'd written me a lengthy letter of apology that seemed genuinely remorseful, though only time would prove its sincerity. The doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. Our Thanksgiving guests had arrived. Raymond, with his arm still in a sling from his second reconstructive surgery, Jessica, who'd returned as Grandpa's part-time nurse, and friend Michael, who'd become a regular presence in my life, and Sarah Thompson with her husband. "Happy Thanksgiving," Raymond said, warmly embracing Grandpa with his good arm. Quite an improvement from last year. Indeed, Grandpa agreed, leading everyone to the living room where a fire crackled in the hearth. No bruises this time. His ability to joke about the trauma was a testament to his resilience. The therapy we'd both committed to over the past year had helped us process the betrayal and violence without letting it define our future. As we settled in with drinks before dinner, I noticed Michael watching me with a smile. What I asked? "Just thinking about how far we've come since that motel room where we were plotting like fugitives." I laughed. "You mean when you saved me from an assassin?" "Hardly an assassin. More like a hired thug who didn't know what he was getting into." Our relationship had evolved gradually from allies in crisis to something deeper. Working closely through the aftermath, we'd discovered how well we complemented each other. His security firm now handled Mitchell Enterprises Protective Services, a contract awarded on merit rather than personal connection. Dinner was everything Thanksgiving should be: warm conversation, excellent food, genuine gratitude. When Grandpa stood to carve the turkey, his hands were steady, his eyes clear. "Before we eat," he said, raising his glass, "I want to toast to family, not the one we're born into, but the one we choose, and the one that chooses us. To loyalty, truth, and second chances." To second chances, we echoed. After dinner, while the others chatted over dessert, Grandpa motioned me to join him in his study, the same room where Robert had struck him a year ago. The space had been completely redesigned, no trace of that night remaining in the warm modern decor. "I have something for you," he said, opening a drawer in his new desk. He withdrew a small box and handed it to me. Inside was a key. I recognized the key to the lakeside cabin where our family had spent summers when my parents were alive. "I had it renovated this year," Grandpa explained. "Thought it might be a good place for you to find peace when the company pressures get too intense." Tears welled in my eyes. The cabin held our happiest family memories untouched by the betrayals we'd endured. "Thank you," I whispered. "For everything. For trusting me when everyone told you not to. I always knew who you were, Cassandra. Even when they tried to make me forget myself, I remembered you." He hugged me tightly, and in that moment, I felt the full circle of our journey from the shocked silence of last Thanksgiving to this quiet moment of healing. Later, as our guests prepared to leave, Michael pulled me aside. "I have something to ask you," he said nervously. "I know it's only been a year, and we've both been focused on recovery and rebuilding, but I can't imagine going back to a life where you're not a central part of it." My heart raced as he took my hand. "I'm not proposing not yet," he clarified quickly. "But I am asking if you're open to the possibility of us building something permanent together eventually." I smiled, squeezing his hand. "I'm definitely open to that possibility." As we rejoined the others for goodbyes, I reflected on everything the past year had taught me. Trust must be given wisely, but withheld mercilessly when betrayed. Family is defined by actions, not blood. Healing doesn't erase scars, but incorporates them into a stronger whole. Most importantly, I'd learned that when someone shows you who they are, whether through kindness or cruelty, believe them the first time. That night, after everyone had gone and Grandpa had retired to his room, I stood alone in the grand foyer of the mansion that had witnessed both our family's greatest achievements and darkest betrayals. The house felt different now, cleansed of secrets and lies, ready for a new chapter. The Mitchell legacy would continue, but on foundations of integrity rather than deception. The bruise that had marked my grandfather's face last Thanksgiving had faded long ago, but the lessons it brought would remain with us forever. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you've ever experienced family betrayal or stood alone against those who should have supported you, I hope my journey gives you strength. Sometimes the hardest battles are fought against those closest to us, but standing firm for what's right is always worth it in the end. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who betrayed your trust? What helped you get through it? Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more stories of family drama and triumph, and share with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone in their struggles. Until next time, remember that true family is defined by love and loyalty, not just shared DNA.